office, U.S. President Donald Trump has largely avoided numerous civil and criminal lawsuits against him, including defamation cases and an investigation into the finances of the Trump Organization. But all of that could change if he is not reelected next week. For more, we're joined by lawyer and legal analyst Terry Austin. Good to have you with us this morning.
Good morning.
We said numerous, and there are numerous, both civil and criminal suits. But let's go through the five biggest legal threats that Trump is facing right now.
Well, that's right. The biggest legal threat I think he's facing, he still has that obstruction of justice. And even though the Mueller report, and that was a 448-page report, even though that came out with no conspiracy with Russia to interfere with the election, Mueller did say there were 10 counts of obstruction. And one of the biggest counts was the fact that he directed Don McGahn to fire Mueller. So that's a big area, and I think you're going to see the attorney generals around the United States looking at that, particularly in New York. And I think that's going to be one of the areas that we're going to be focusing on.
The other one would be campaign finance charges.
Exactly. I think the campaign finance charges are a big issue here. And the fact that Trump really directed the settlement of Stormy Daniels with the intent to influence the 2016 election. And so he really tried to prevent Daniels from making embarrassing statements. And that also is a very big issue. So that could really get him at the end of the day.
Third on this list is tax fraud.
Well, that's right. And so Trump has really been claiming all of these losses for many, many years. And yet some of those deductions are deductions that really don't stand, the defense that he's saying. He's got deductions for, he's saying haircuts. And really the biggest area from a financial standpoint is the fact that he paid his daughter Ivanka hundreds of thousands of dollars in consulting fees, and that might come back and bite him later down the line.
Now, this fourth case we did have an update on as early as yesterday, the E. Jean Carroll defamation lawsuit.
Well, that's exactly right. And she's claiming that he really molested her in a department store, and she has DNA to prove it. And she's asked for his DNA. He's refused so far. But just yesterday, the federal judge there did rule that the Department of Justice cannot interfere there. And Trump was trying to claim that the Department of Justice could take over that case for him, in which case there would be some immunity. So the judge said, no, that cannot happen. And so that case will go forward.
And quickly, the fraud lawsuit that was filed by Mary Trump.
Right. So Mary Trump is trying to say that the estate really was partially hers and that the whole Trump family, the uncle, et cetera, was trying to keep it away from her. And in fact, they defrauded her and stated that the estate was much less value than it really was. And so had it not been for this fraudulent conspiracy, she would actually have much more financial investment in that estate at this point. So she's suing for fraud.
These are the five most prominent cases that are pending. And because of a law in the U.S. that states that the president cannot be indicted while he is serving the country in the role of president. What happens to these suits if he is or is not reelected next week?
Well, that's right. From a civil standpoint, these suits are still around, but he's just kicking those down the line. From a criminal standpoint, as you mentioned, there is the DOJ memorandum, which states that a sitting president cannot be indicted the second he is no longer a sitting president. And that's left up for interpretation. Obviously, when the inauguration happens, if in fact he doesn't win, then I think you will be seeing attorney generals across the country, particularly in New York, where I am here, pursuing these criminal actions against him as well.
Terry, really quickly, in the sort of 20 seconds that we have left, when you're watching from this side of the border here in Canada, will it further divide the U.S. to go ahead with these lawsuits if he is not reelected?
I don't think it's going to divide the U.S. any further. I mean, I think we are about as far apart as we can get from a political standpoint, if what you mean by that is, as far as Republicans and Democrats and partisan politics is concerned. I think that there's going to be some serious consideration as to whether or not there should be a pardon if, in fact, Trump loses. But I think at the end of the day that, there'll be many people who think that these actions should be pursued against Trump and that no one, including the president of the United States or former president of the United States, is above the law.
Terry Austin, great to have your perspective on this, less than a week to go before Election Day. Thanks so much.
Thank you.